To sit where no one else can, you must do what no one dares. Challenging the destroyer of boxers when he was starting to learn boxing. Ready to fight wrestlers 20 kilograms heavier, that is Taylor Keita, the invisible boxer in the gym, but the champion in the cage. Throughout his 20 years of life, Keita has always been looked down upon because he couldn't do anything right. He was always at the bottom of his class, changed jobs every 2 weeks, had no girlfriend, and even less of a future. The lonely one, that's what fans call Keita when he steps into the ring, because those around him, if they don't betray him or leave, will face an unavoidable misfortune. Back when Keita first started boxing, after 3 narrow victories in an amateur tournament, Keita asked boss if he could train with professional fighters to improve his skills, but the boss straight up refused and told him his current skill level was way too low. Unlike others, Keita didn't just leave, he stayed and kept trying to convince the coach. He said he wanted to become a champion, win titles, and then join the UFC. Keita said he had no other path besides boxing. He didn't have a college degree and could barely even spell correctly, so he begged the boss to give him a chance. But the boss still didn't change his mind. He told Keita that he could train, he could sacrifice his whole life, but that didn't mean he would become a champion. It might sound unfair, but that's life. Returning home with a gloomy face, Keita had to face his drug-addicted mother. She lived a careless, irresponsible life and never cared about him. When Keita confided in his mother that he wanted to give up his dream of boxing, she was completely indifferent and said that this wasn't the first time he had failed and that he would find something else. Right after that, she continued to ask Keita for money. However, the young boxer didn't feel upset. Instead, he was even willing to skip training to earn money to help his mother. To thank Keita, she wished him a happy birthday, which at least somewhat comforted the lonely heart of the boxer. That night, Keita watched the UFC finals and learned about the 2-division champion, Georges. He was the most well-rounded fighter in the history of the world, who had won the UFC championship twice in different weight classes, something very few people in this sport have done. Georges' extraordinary achievements made Keita even more discouraged, which prompted him to decide to leave the boss's gym. Just as he was about to leave, Ibrahim and his gang appeared. He was known as the Destroyer in the boxing world, winning all the fights he participated in, and, in particular, extremely aggressive. Ibrahim was once the boss's best student, but was kicked out of the gym for some reason. Famous for his dominant sparring matches on Insta, Ibrahim often brought people to clubs to embarrass them on live streams. The boss knew that all too well, so he patiently calmed everyone down. He was determined not to let Ibrahim achieve his goal. Under Ibrahim's provocation, the best boxer in the gym couldn't control his anger. He was about to rush at him, but couldn't overcome the boss's resolve. Faced with the coach's firmness, Ibrahim thought he had to leave empty-handed, but no. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly spoke up. "I'll fight." Taylor Keita stepped forward to everyone's surprise. Boss advised him that if he wanted to do this to impress him, it would be a bad idea. Before the fight began, his friend showed Keita a video Ibrahim posted on social media. He was famous not only for his talent, but also for his aggression. He broke a fighter's arm during a sparring match, even though the guy had already tapped out. Most importantly, he and Keita weren't in the same league. Ibrahim was a seasoned fighter, a championship contender in many upcoming tournaments, and the best fighter of his young generation. Keita had nothing but guts. Ignoring his friend's attempts to stop him, Keita still boldly stepped into the cage. He tried to put on protective gear, but was stopped by Ibrahim, because he wanted to crush the young boxer in extreme pain. Ibrahim started the fight very calmly. He observed Keita's movement and confirmed that he was indeed an amateur. After announcing to the viewers that this match would end soon, Ibrahim stepped towards Keita and unleashed a powerful kick that sent him flying into the fence. Keita moved clumsily, passively, and could only dodge. His attacks were too predictable, so Ibrahim quickly took him down. At his friend's request, the boss agreed to advise Keita. He told the boxer to be proactive, move more, and not stand in front of Ibrahim. But the aftershock from Ibrahim's earlier punch made it impossible for Keita to stay on his feet. He took another brutal knee from the Destroyer, followed by a flurry of non-stop blows to the face. Nico saw what was happening, jumped in to stop it, and was immediately kicked to the ground by Ibrahim. After Nico was chased out of the cage, Keita got back on his feet. He tried to get into a defensive stance like the boss told him, but he still couldn't withstand Ibrahim's insane attacks. After taking a beating for a while, Keita suddenly swept Ibrahim's leg, taking him down. He immediately got furious and told his gang to turn off the camera. "I'm going to kill this kid here." The big guy saw this and picked up his camera to keep filming the fight. Ibrahim charged in angrily, but Keita dodged and counterattacked with a punch. The Destroyer fell stunned, unable to get up, and had to leave the cage. Keita's name was chanted by all the fighters in the gym. He was now the rising star of MMA fighters. The coach was no exception. He hoped Keita would continue striving on the path to becoming a champion in his own right. A few days later, Ibrahim had a press conference before his first fight in KSW. The guy was still as obnoxious as ever, insulting his opponent and constantly showing a look of contempt for others. A reporter saw this and asked Ibrahim about his humiliating defeat to the young fighter, Keita. The black guy made the excuse that it was just a practice match, so he held back. While Keita fought with his life, if it had been a real fight, Keita would probably be in the hospital. The feeling that his opponent is about to experience, Ibrahim's ability to trash talk, is truly on another level. Every single sentence that came out of his mouth made people want to jump in and punch his tongue off. Elsewhere, Keita went to the boss's office to ask about the next training plan. However, the boss was indifferent and said that nothing had changed. Keita would still train with the amateur team and fight in amateur tournaments. Even when the young fighter boasted that he would be on the podcast of the legend Cyril tonight, the boss didn't even care. Before going on air, Keita suddenly received news that the champion Georges had just shared his video on his personal page. The most well-rounded fighter in history is paying attention to Keita, which makes him incredibly happy. With a cheerful face, Keita stepped in front of the camera, introduced himself, and then talked about his ideal role model, who is Georges. His way of thinking, his movement in the cage, and his organization gave Keita a lot of inspiration. Throughout the podcast, the two new guests continuously mocked Keita. They played a video of his first fight live on air. The video showed that he was turning his back and running around the cage to escape his opponent's attacks. He ultimately won, but didn't get high marks from the judges. Keita knew very well that he was being made into a joke, but couldn't do anything else. He had to listen to the sarcasm, contempt, and criticism throughout the recording. The two even suggested that his victory over the notorious Ibrahim was due to luck, not actual skill. The power of social media is truly terrifying. The video of Ibrahim being defeated by Keita had reached the ears of the UFC. Immediately, the young fighter was invited to share his story on TV. Ibrahim was furious to see Keita on UFC, thanks to his reputation, and even more annoyed when Keita declared that he wanted to replace Ibrahim's opponent in the opening fight of KSW. He said that he was about to train with a legend, and when he returned, he would beat him even harder than the first time. Strangely, the usually aggressive Ibrahim refused Keita's challenge, explaining that he did it because he didn't want to become a media stunt for the young fighter. Accepting would be like admitting he was salty about his previous loss. As it turns out, Keita's sudden challenge was actually the idea of the legend Georges. He saw great potential in the young fighter Keita, and more importantly, he wanted someone who could embarrass Ibrahim, since he couldn't do it himself. To continue to put pressure on Ibrahim, Georges told Keita to diligently post his training videos on Insta, which would get the media's attention on them. It wasn't just Georges, but 3 people were training Keita. Time was running out, so Georges had him jump straight into sparring to improve his adaptability. However, because Keita lacked formal training, both his defense and offense were weak. He was passive and didn't know how to move when in a tough spot. Realizing this wasn't the best way to train Keita, Georges decided to change his strategy. Georges improved Keita's stamina while teaching him how to punch in a way that conserved energy. He meticulously guided him through every little scenario in the ring. To defeat Ibrahim, Keita needs to keep moving around him throughout the rounds. He's taller, stronger, and has a longer reach than Keita. If he manages to pin Keita to the ground, the fight will be over. On the other side, the boss's most talented fighter has decided to leave the gym. He wants to go somewhere else to improve his skills and join the UFC. They are a club with experienced coaches, while the boss, though skilled, has never made it to the UFC. Back to Keita, the young fighter was improving day by day. Under the guidance of the legend Georges, the path for Keita to join the UFC was wider than ever. He was moving more fluidly, striking faster, and punching with more determination. And the surprise and impact of each blow were also stronger. Keita was making history. He was definitely the fastest, improving young fighter in the boxing world. The French diamond in the rough was now polished and shining. Keita was ready, and the upcoming fight was sure to be incredibly exciting. The videos Keita posted on social media were indeed very effective. The experts were looking forward to the fight, but the media thought it would never happen because Ibrahim had too much to lose. His silence made him even more criticized. Everyone thought Ibrahim was afraid of the youthful hunger, afraid that he would be knocked out in a real fight. Ibrahim's manager, of course, wouldn't like this. He forced him to respond immediately, not to let the press blow this up. That same day, Ibrahim posted a video saying he wouldn't accept Keita's challenge because he's an amateur. They're not in the same league, so a real fight would be too dangerous for the young fighter. Foreseeing this, Georges used his connections to continue putting pressure on the black guy. The legendary fighter said he was sure Keita would beat Ibrahim. He was just too scared. So he was making excuses with those lies. Meanwhile, Ibrahim had refused nearly 20 opponents, claiming they were nobodies. But when his manager suggested the name, Taylor Keita, he and his coach made excuses that they didn't want to fight amateurs. The legend Georges has spoken. The legend told everyone that he's scared. Yet he still cares about the word amateur? As for me, I'm starting to believe that guy could beat our champion. Ibrahim's face clearly showed his worry. Although he didn't want to accept, his pride forced him to take the challenge. After hearing this news, Keita ran to inform his coach, and then asked for permission to return to France. Georges acknowledges Keita's talent and hard work, but Ibrahim is very dangerous. He's stronger, more experienced, has a bigger physique, and theoretically, he's way better than Keita. But that also means Keita is doing something nobody has dared to do, challenging an opponent who's completely out of his league. And if he wins, he'll write his name in history. The only way for Keita to win is to believe in himself, take the initiative, and not panic when he's attacked. Returning home, Keita hasn't even had a chance to tell his mom the good news when he sees her boyfriend. Birds of a feather flock together. He's just as useless as she is. All they do is sit around, get wasted on booze, and throw themselves into gambling. The guy bet a large sum of money on Keita, losing in the second round. With Keita's current skill level, the guy's sure he can't win. But lasting through the first round is doable. Keita wasn't planning on agreeing, but then he heard his mom say she was in deep with a huge debt. And didn't he just say a few days ago that he'd quit boxing to help her make money? After some serious thinking, Keita finally nodded yes. It seems like the fighter's love for his mom is even bigger than his career. That night, while Keita was busy training, Boss walked up and offered to be his coach. After everything Boss put him through, of course, Keita wouldn't agree. He said he needed someone who believed in his abilities, not someone who saw him as a replacement. If that talented fighter hadn't ditched Boss, he probably wouldn't be standing here. Boss admitted he was wrong to Keita once, so this time he's helping the fighter. He believes in Keita's abilities, but whether Keita can beat Ibrahim or not, that's not a sure thing. The day of the KSW tournament arrived. The only female fighter from the training group, Elena, scored a spectacular win, boosting Keita's morale. Next up was his first fight in a professional tournament. It's unbelievable that in just 3 weeks, he went from an unknown amateur fighter to competing in a world-class match. Before Keita entered the arena, he got a text from his mom's boyfriend. He didn't reply, but deep down, he knew what he had to do. Stepping into the ring with a less-than-ideal spirit, Keita's face showed sadness and worry. In contrast, Ibrahim entered the cage with the utmost determination, like a tiger on an intense hunt. The difference in physique between the two was seriously obvious. Ibrahim had 12 wins and 0 losses in his career, truly living up to his reputation as a fighter destroyer. As soon as the match started, Ibrahim attacked relentlessly, wanting to crush Keita and knock him out as soon as possible. Because he promised his mom, Keita didn't attack at all. He just curled up in defense to avoid getting finished off in the first round. Ibrahim's punches were extremely dangerous, aimed at Keita's vital points. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this a one-sided match. Keita was completely overwhelmed, constantly taking hits and having no time to breathe. At first, the crowd was cheering for Keita, but as time went on, they started to get annoyed because they couldn't understand what the heck he was doing in the ring. Keita didn't even move a bit while Ibrahim was hyping up the audience. And when he came back, Keita continued with his weak attacks and immediately ate another powerful punch from Ibrahim. Luckily, the young fighter managed to hold on until the end of the first round. Georges was extremely disappointed with his student's lackluster performance. Even the boss couldn't recognize the previously enthusiastic fighter. Because Keita wasn't fighting, the boss felt like he was sleepwalking. The boss wanted him to wake up and fight, not just avoid the confrontation. The second round started with Ibrahim landing a direct kick to Keita's face, followed by a series of fatal blows that cornered him. After the destroyer's powerful punch, everyone was cheering for Keita to get up, except for his mom's boyfriend, who wanted him to stay down. In his daze, Keita remembered his mom's and her boyfriend's words. He was about to give up, but with some kind of willpower, he stood back up. Keita's eyes changed at this moment, and he suddenly counterattacked, shocking Ibrahim. Keita's spirit soared, making him seem like a different person. A Superman punch pushed Ibrahim against the cage. The two continued to trade blows in the center of the ring. Kita returned every punch he received. Finally, the old Kita was back, a Kita that Ibrahim feared facing. However, Ibrahim was indeed very strong. He unexpectedly unleashed a powerful punch that stunned Kita, followed by a forceful takedown. Ibrahim kept pounding Kita's head, but he just couldn't knock the guy out. At the end of the second round, Ibrahim's coach told him he had to knock Kita out as soon as the third round started. Knowing this was coming, Kita's boss told him to focus on dodging and counterattacking. When Ibrahim risked coming forward, that's when he exposed his weakness. Kita followed boss's advice, dodged the hits, and turned up the heat, keeping Ibrahim from being able to attack. After the young fighter pinned him against the ropes, Ibrahim suddenly broke free and, in a fit of rage, nailed him with an elbow to the neck. That's a banned move in boxing, an unsportsmanlike move from Ibrahim that could get him banned. If Kita decides to stop the fight, Ibrahim will be disqualified immediately. Kita got back on his feet, and the whole place went wild in surprise. And it got even more surprising when he agreed to keep fighting. Ibrahim got a 1-point penalty, but he wouldn't be disqualified. Both guys were exhausted, so their hits weren't landing with much power. Ibrahim brought his knee up, kicking Kita in the chest, and then started to rush him. That's exactly what Kita was waiting for. He unleashed a sudden and wicked hook. Kita charged in, attacking like a madman. Ibrahim could only cover his head until the third round ended. Since there was no knockout, the winner would be decided on points. Kita gave up the first round, so he was afraid he might lose. When Boss heard this, he said he was proud of him, and that win or lose, he was still a winner in Boss's heart. According to the commentators, this should be a win for Taylor Kita. He landed more decisive blows, and, most importantly, didn't play dirty. When the results were announced, the first judge scored 29-27 for Ibrahim. The second judge scored at 29-27 for Kita, and the final judge scored 28-28, resulting in a draw. Ibrahim was furious when he heard this, and started cursing at the judges. Unable to do anything else, he rushed over and kicked Kita away. The crowd was going nuts, booing Ibrahim and chanting Taylor Kita's name. Kita's win made Elena admire him even more, and she kissed him as her way of confessing her feelings. Kita was thrilled, and called his mom. He told her that money wasn't a problem anymore, and after this fight, he'd join more tournaments, and make tons of cash. But his mom didn't say anything, which made him worried. Kita rushed back home, and saw his mom with a bruise on her face. The mother's boyfriend blamed him for not sticking to the deal, which resulted in loan sharks physically assaulting his mother. They owed the loan sharks $40,000 and were told that if they didn't pay up within a month, they would both be killed. Extremely worried, Kita rushed to ask Boss about his earnings per fight. Boss told him that in the boxing world, each fight only brings in about $10,000. To make more, he'd have to become a star. When Elena showed up, Kita forgot all about the money. He was just staring at her and not focusing on training. After practice, Kita met Nico at a coffee shop to talk about his mom's situation. Right then, Nico was using a banned substance that contained doping agents to cut fat. To avoid getting caught, he needed to stop taking it 6 weeks before a fight. As someone who once fiercely pursued Elena, Nico advises Kita to give up his dream of winning her over. Everyone in the gym knows she doesn't like dating fighters. Just look at Elena's indifferent attitude when Kita looks at her. It's clear he never stood a chance. Moving on, Kita confesses that his mother owes a large sum of money, and he desperately needs cash. Right then, a chubby guy who studies at the Polytechnic comes over. When it comes to boxing, this guy is the boss. He knows everything. He says that currently, the only tournament still running is KSW, and the prize money for champions in various categories can reach up to 100. Oh whoa. Hearing this, Kita rushes to the gym to meet the boss that very night, asking for his help to win the KSW championship, because he urgently needs the money. Boss obviously won't agree, because this tournament is for heavyweights. They're at least 20 pounds heavier than him. If he takes this risk, Kita could get seriously injured, especially since he's training for the December championship. The problem is that Kita's mom can't wait that long. He needs the money now to save her from danger. After hearing the whole truth from Kita, even the toughest coach would soften up. He knows if he doesn't withdraw, Kita will probably face life-threatening danger. This tournament is pretty unique. Kita will have to fight 3 matches, the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, all in one night. Even though each match is only 3 rounds, and each round is just 5 minutes, he's bound to be completely exhausted. The best thing for Kita right now is to eat a ton, and eat a ton to gain weight as fast as possible. Those fighters are all stronger than Kita, so he needs better cardio, to be faster, and have more stamina. After finishing the physical improvement phase, the boss and Kita move into phase 2, sparring. In each training session, the fighter will face 3 heavier opponents one after another, non-stop pushing himself to his absolute limits. One day, after Kaita finished training, Elena was waiting there to talk to him. When Kaita said he heard everything from Nico, Elena explained that she had to make up that lie because of guys like Nico. Elena had to say she didn't like fighters to stop them from chasing her. She only has feelings for Kaita and is only ready to love him. The very next morning, the boss brought more good news for Kaita. 2 of the boss's friends showed up, the legend Cyril and the king of laziness, Abdul. Cyril is a striking expert, and Abdul is a master of locks and chokes. When facing bigger guys, Kaita will get hit, so he can't be afraid of that. He needs to stay calm so his opponents can't predict his next move. Most importantly, Kaita must always maintain a safe distance and stay solid if he's under heavy attack. The strength of wrestlers lies in their ground game. He needs to have a rock-solid defense and know how to handle himself in that situation. Kaita is a really fast learner, and every day he's making the boss even more surprised and proud. On the day of the tournament, Kaita asks his close friend Nico to hold his phone. His opponent in the quarterfinals is a whole 10 kg heavier, so for sure he'll try to take Kaita to the ground. The 2 fighters have completely different styles. One is a Russian wrestler, and the other is a striker. Even though Kaita is smaller, he has the advantage in speed. If he can move quickly and stay agile, it's anyone's game. Right as the fight starts, the Russian wrestler charges in, trying to take Kaita down. But Kaita sees it coming. He lands a surprise knee strike that instantly drops the guy. Knockout! Just 5 seconds into the fight, Taylor Kaita has truly made history. He didn't even break a sweat. This is the most perfect start imaginable. Meanwhile, Nico found out about Elena and Kaita's relationship through their text messages. Nico couldn't hide his jealousy, and he purposely showed his annoyance with Kaita in front of the boss. The coach told them to put everything aside. The most important thing right now is for Kaita to focus on the semifinal match. His opponent is Arif, a really strong wrestler, who's a whole 33 pounds heavier than Kaita. Clearly, this is a seriously tough fight, but Kaita isn't worried because he has the boss in his corner. The fight begins, and Arif throws some seriously heavy shots at Kaita. His size advantage lets him deal more damage to the younger fighter. The moment Kaita loses focus, Arif instantly shoots in and takes him down to the mat. The boss is yelling from behind, telling him to use the fence to get back up. Arif wants to crush Kaita, so he's using his body to trap the fighter's head. Being pinned down by a guy with so much weight on him makes it tough for Kaita to escape. But with his sheer persistence, Kaita lands a solid hook and manages to break free from the hold. Round 1 ends, and Kaita realizes right away that he can't beat this guy on the ground. The only way to win is to counter when he tries to wrestle him down, but that means he needs to stay strong on his feet first. Round 2 starts, and Kaita comes out swinging with tons of confidence. He's blocking punches like a champ and countering with a flurry of attacks that send Arif crashing to the mat. Kaita goes for the knockout, but Arif grabs his arm in a tight hold, forcing Kaita to struggle to break free. Once they're both back on their feet, Arif charges in with a takedown attempt, but Kaita expertly dodges it. The fighter unleashes a barrage of powerful punches towards Arif until the bell rings, ending the round. Despite winning round 2, Kaita is visibly exhausted and nursing an injury. It looks like round 3 is going to be a real battle. While his coach tries to encourage him, Nico taunts Kaita, asking why he's scared of his takedown. The coach shuts Nico down and tells Kaita to keep his distance. Just like he expected, as soon as round 3 starts, Arif flies in, pushing Kaita against the cage. The fighter's exhausted, but he's refusing to let Arif lock up his arms. He's defending well and suddenly cracks his opponent with an elbow, followed by a bunch of powerful punches to the face. Arif, with no other options, lunges to pin Kaita to the floor, but the young fighter handles the situation brilliantly, actively locking his legs around Arif's neck, and then delivering a killer uppercut that sends him flying. As Kaita approaches Arif, the wrestler launches himself, pinning Kaita firmly to the ground. The fighter had to struggle with all his might to escape Arif's chokehold, a narrow loss for Taylor Kaita. In the end, with his iron will, the judges declared him the first to secure a spot in the finals. But with his current physical condition, who knows how he'll even fight in the 3rd match. Seeing that Kaita was barely conscious, Boss advised him to stop there. He knew he couldn't win, and silently agreed with his coach's decision. After Boss ran to get the doctor, Nico said he didn't want Kaita to give up after all this effort to reach the finals. Only to stop now. Boss never believes in you, but I always do. If you finish it quickly, you can still win. Think about your mom. Think about the money she needs. It was because of Nico's words that Kaita decided to keep fighting. Boss, after hearing this news, was furious. He kicked Nico out and then questioned Keita about why he was taking such a risk. Your opponent is in top form. His 2 previous wins were both knockouts. There's no way Keita can beat him. You never thought I had a chance. You don't understand me. I'm going to fight. Knowing he couldn't convince Keita, Boss quietly withdrew. His opponent in the final is the tournament's nightmare, the cold-blooded assassin from Austria, Weber. He's a full 20 kg heavier than Keita, and to make matters worse, he hasn't even broken a sweat yet, which has Boss extremely worried. Just as Boss predicted, this final match is completely one-sided. Keita is exhausted, while Weber is raging like a bull. The match begins. Keita throws out incredibly weak punches, while each one of Weber's blows carries a ton of weight. He knocks Keita down, but instead of jumping in to finish him off, he encourages him to get back up. From the audience's perspective, it looks like Keita's just being toyed with. He immediately regains his energy, dodging well, landing good hooks, and counter-attacking sharply. Keita successfully corners Weber, but that inadvertently leads to him getting knocked out. After a brutal elbow, Weber keeps coming to finish him off with a straight punch to the mouth. Keita is out cold, and the medical team rushes in, immediately putting him on oxygen. Waking up after the coma and nearly 4 weeks of intensive treatment, Keita discovers that Ibrahim has just posted a video online demanding a rematch. The fighter's blood is instantly boiling, and he begs Boss to let him compete again. He wants to smash Ibrahim's face and shut his fans up. Of course, Boss won't agree because he just recovered from that knockout. If he loses to Ibrahim, he'll lose all his fame. Now, Boss will find opponents that Keita can beat. Thanks to those matches, he can climb to the peak of his boxing career. However, Keita is still stubbornly insisting on a rematch with Ibrahim. He needs this fight to reassert himself. With the prize money of over $33,000, Boss and Keita went to give it to his mother, but were only met with a look of indifference. She said that this amount might help her a little. Hearing this, Boss said this is the money that Keita earned with great difficulty, that he put his blood and tears to get it. Keita truly has potential. He could become a great champion, but he also needs his family's support. Back at the gym, Keita, haunted by the knockout, started having hallucinations. His punches were weak and full of self-doubt. Meanwhile, Ibrahim is training like a madman for his rematch with Keita. He's dead set on crushing the young fighter and ending his career. Keita might be physically recovered, but the doctor's sure he's not there mentally. After that brutal knockout, it's highly likely Keita's suffering from post-concussion syndrome. The symptoms include headaches, blurred vision, tremors, disorientation, and ringing in the ears, often with flashbacks of the moment right before the incident. Keita's got all of it, but he's still lying to the doctor so he can get that rematch with Ibrahim. The doctor could sense something was wrong and told him to rest for a while, but he wouldn't listen. He tricked Boss, saying the doctor cleared him to fight again, and he was ready to go back in the ring. The next day was the press conference between the Destroyer and the Loner. This time, Keita wasn't as composed as before. Ibrahim's trash talk got to him, and he shoved him first. This move showed he wasn't confident, and that wasn't the Keita Elena was used to seeing. The female fighter was worried about her boyfriend. She was afraid the psychological impact of that knockout was too much, and he hadn't recovered yet. Come to this rematch, the whole crew waited for Nico for almost an hour, because he was busy soaking up Keita's fame. Sensing Nico's dangerous nature, Boss advised Keita to be careful. Nico was always trying to provoke him and do shady things behind the fighter's back. Keita saw Nico as a close comrade and defended him, saying that Nico was always by his side and would never betray him. Boss speaks up in dismay. Today, that might be the case, but things will change if you go further. Trust me, when you leave Nico in the dust, that's when he'll stab you in the back. When the crew arrived at the arena, Nico was showing off for the cameras, stirring things up, hogging the spotlight as if he was the one fighting Ibrahim. Keita, of course, wasn't having it. He told his buddy to tone it down, and that's when the first real crack in their friendship appeared. Before stepping into the ring, Keita was hit with post-traumatic stress again. He was shaking, dizzy, and couldn't bring himself to go out and greet everyone. The trauma from his past was so intense that Keita froze in place. He couldn't move a muscle because his whole body was trembling uncontrollably. Looking into Keita's eyes, Boss seemed to understand everything. He told Elena to take him home and to leave everything to him. Outside in the stands, neither the audience nor Ibrahim's team had any idea what was going on. When the announcer declared that the fight was off, the Destroyer ran up, snatched the mic from the host, and announced that he would destroy Boss's gym, threaten everyone who trained there, and curse out everyone connected to the coach on social media. Of course, Boss isn't going to let him get away with this. He sends a bunch of pictures of a woman with a message. If you keep messing with my guy, I'll expose what you've been doing on social media. Kaida doesn't even need to say anything. Boss already knows he's struggling mentally. He's afraid to step into the cage, afraid to put on his gloves, but doesn't know how to get out of this situation. Boss listens and says he's got an idea, but it's risky. If anything bad happens to him, the boss will regret it for the rest of his life. It's now or never, and Kaida, fueled by sheer guts, is willing to try. Boxing is the only thing he's good at, so he feels like he has no other choice. If Kita can pass this tough test, the boss will let him train with a special someone. George's coach, the coach of the greatest boxer in history. The place the boss takes Kita to is an underground fight club. There are no rules here and no referees, so it's very easy for a fighter to end up dead. Looking at the steel cage surrounded by a crowd of thugs, Kaida's fear of boxing resurfaces. The boss gives him two choices: either face his fear or go back to Paris and forget about everything. The underground fight scene is always risky, and Kaida wonders if his trembling hands can do anything against these bloodthirsty, aggressive guys. Boss encouraged him, saying that he was a champion, the best, and his opponents were just a bunch of clueless rookies. Seeing Kaida's trembling, Boss told him to shout that he wasn't scared, but he couldn't do it. Facing a huge, aggressive fighter and surrounded by loud-mouthed thugs, Kaida's head was spinning with fear. He just ran around the cage, dodging but not fighting back. Encouraged by Boss, Kaida starts fighting back. He pins him to the ground, but his punches aren't enough to finish him off. The guy throws Kaida hard to the ground and tries to stomp on him, but Kaida dodges it. After getting back into the fight, Kaida seems stronger than ever. He knocks his opponent down and rains down a series of brutal punches to his face. Kaida only stops when Boss jumps in to break it up. Hearing the crowd roaring, Kaida kept running and unleashed a brutal kick to the head of the downed fighter. As Boss dragged him out of the cage, the crowd swarmed in, attacking them both. They were determined not to let Kaida leave. The two fought back together, but in a split second of distraction, a bald guy with glasses plunged a knife into Boss's stomach. Clutching his bleeding gut outside the door, Boss, with his last breaths, told Kaida that he was really good and that Boss was very proud of him. Kaida wanted to call an ambulance, but because he didn't know the address, they couldn't come. As a result, Boss fell into a deep coma for 3 long months, with no sign of waking up. After a tough investigation, the big guy found out the identity of Boss's attacker. He's one of Ibrahim's men, showing up at every fight that Scumbag is in. In other words, Ibrahim is the mastermind behind Boss's attempted murder. Ibrahim's motive goes back to when he beat up his girlfriend at the gym. His girlfriend went to Boss for help, and the coach took photos of her injuries as evidence. Boss wanted to call the cops, but she didn't agree because she was afraid of Ibrahim getting revenge. So the boss kicked him out of the club and used the photos of his ex-girlfriend to blackmail him. Now, the only way to get revenge on Ibrahim is to defeat him and his reputation in the ring. If they went through an investigation and trial, it would take a long time. Carrying the spirit of revenge for the boss to Mexico, Kaida is determined to reclaim his former fighting spirit, to make Ibrahim pay for what he's done. Kaida has been sent to the club of the world's best trainer, Six Gun, the man who trained the undefeated Georges we know today. Boss told Six Gun to take good care of Kaida, so he's been spending extra time with the young fighter. Unfortunately, Kaida's not performing as they hoped. He keeps getting hit and looks helpless against even the amateur fighters here. That night, Kaida has a nightmare about Boss getting stabbed. It's been haunting him for 3 months straight, and it won't stop. He goes to Six Gun's gym and suddenly decides to quit training. He says he can't fight like he used to anymore. It's hard to admit, but he's just not a fighter anymore. Hearing this, Six Gun says he'll arrange for someone to take him to the airport. As Kaida gets in the car, a booming voice speaks up. If he goes to the airport now, he'll be giving up on his dream and his promise to Boss. But if he goes with him, he'll put everything he's got into getting him back in the ring. When Kaida turns around, he realizes it's Georges, the greatest boxer in history. Georges is helping Kaida because he heard his story from his coach, Six Gun. The first lesson Georges wants Kaida to learn is that he's lost the eye of the tiger, something that's always present in the eyes of every fighter. With their rage fueling them, a fire burning in their eyes, they fought. A fighter's duty is to win. It's the only chance at a good life. Kaida didn't think he ever had the eye of the tiger, and if he did, he was afraid he couldn't get it back. If there's one saying that's always true, it's this: there's always a light at the end of the tunnel for those who don't give up. Georges had been through a lot in his life. His mother died when he was young. His sister passed away very young, and he'd made mistakes throughout his life. He lost friends, teammates, and his coach, and felt like the whole world hated him. Just like Kaida, Georges doubted himself, thinking he couldn't come back, but we all saw what happened. In the following days, Keita trained with the toughest guys in the fight game. He sparred with 3 or 4 guys in a single session, and his fighting skills and ability to adapt improved dramatically. Keita's excitement got Georges pumped. He improved day by day and successfully got back the eye of the tiger, the deadly weapon of a great fighter. Back in France, and fueled by a burning desire for revenge, Keita was ready to avenge Boss, ready to smash his face and then make his way to the UFC. The fighter bought 2 first-class tickets for his mom and her boyfriend so they could come to watch him fight. He wanted his mom to witness his success, to repay her for giving him life. Because the boss is in a coma, Georges has gone to France to mentor his student. With him there, Keita is like a tiger with wings. Right before the match, Nico bursts into the waiting room and says his mom didn't show up to get her ticket. This makes Keita worried. He's afraid she's been jumped by loan sharks, so he speeds home to check on her. There are only 2 hours left until the match, and if anything happens to Keita, his career will hit rock bottom. When Keita gets home, he's confronted with the sight of 2 people packing up to leave. His mom says her boyfriend's gotten into a lot of trouble here, so they need to move somewhere else. Turns out, the money they've been forcing Keita to earn was for saving, not for paying off debts. And the injury on Keita's mom's face back then was caused by her boyfriend, not the debt collectors. She blames Keita for always making her feel ashamed. He was always at the bottom of his class, and his unstable job made people laugh at her. Even in the end, she still doesn't acknowledge Keita's talent. She still sees him as a burden, and raising him is just a temporary obligation. Keita's heart, though shattered, has to let it all go because he knows a bright career is waiting for him out there. He still has Elena and the fans who support him. A grudge match between 2 fighters who despise each other is about to begin. One is a destroyer, a total jerk who's done a ton of bad stuff. The other is a loner, a guy who got into boxing because of a burning love and a powerful desire for revenge for his mentor. When the cage door slams shut, the demon inside Keita comes out. A vicious spinning kick snaps straight into Ibrahim's left cheek. Keita rushes in to take him down, but Ibrahim flips him over instead. With sheer determination, Keita swiftly breaks free and lands a solid knee strike. They're trading blows non-stop. Ibrahim's throwing some seriously powerful and damaging shots. He picks Keita up and slams him hard onto the floor. He immediately follows up with a nasty chokehold. Keita's struggling, barely managing to defend, but then Ibrahim locks down his arm tight. A few seconds later, Keita spins out and unleashes a flurry of powerful punches on him. At the end of the first round, both fighters showed the audience their intensity. Georges told Keita not to fight with his back against the cage, and to keep moving to make Ibrahim panic during his attacks. Round 2 started, and the destroyer was the one who came out stronger. He landed some good punches, putting Keita in a tough spot. Even though the fighter countered with an uppercut, it wasn't enough. Ibrahim continued to pressure Keita against the cage, attacking relentlessly and leaving many openings. Seizing the moment, Keita landed a surprise punch that sent Ibrahim crashing to the canvas. The black guy got back up and clinched with Keita. They wrestled around, and Ibrahim hit Keita with a knee straight to the face, while Keita was in a 3-point stance. This is a major no-no in the boxing world. Ibrahim will likely get a lifetime ban, since it's his second offense. The wound caused by the black guy made one of Keita's eyes bleed heavily. Even though he was in pain, he decided to keep fighting. Keita could have stopped the fight and won, but he was determined not to. He didn't want the belt that way. He wanted to finish him. He didn't want to give him a chance to say that his victory was due to luck. That brutal knee strike took a lot out of Keita. He was not only dazed, but also had limited vision, making his chances of winning slimmer than ever. Round 3 kicks off, and Keita, with an iron will, gets back on his feet. He dodges Ibrahim's knee, but his attacks aren't as strong as before. The black guy unleashes a flurry of attacks, but still can't take Keita down. The fighter says he knows everything he did to Boss, and, after defeating him, he will report him to the police. Ibrahim kicks Keita to the ground, but can't close in because of Keita's frustrating defense. The black guy is pushed to the cage, but he seizes the opportunity to punch Keita to the ground. He wants to finish Keita right then and there, but the bell rings, signaling the end of the round. The sound of the audience chanting Taylor Keita echoed throughout the arena, boosting the fighter's spirit. Round 4 began, and he took a flurry of blows from Ibrahim. Keita knew he was running low on gas, so he focused on defense, waiting for a chance to counter. Round 4 ended quickly, and Georges urged Keita to hang in there. Keita's toughness had worn Ibrahim down, tiring his arms and legs. Ibrahim would eventually make a mistake, and that would be Keita's chance to land the knockout blow. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's coach was berating him for letting a rookie like Qaeda last 4 rounds. Enraged, Ibrahim chased his coach out of the cage. At this point, he would have cursed out anyone, no matter who they were. Qaeda couldn't hide his exhaustion. He only had 5 minutes left to change his life and send his opponent to hell. This was a mental round, because both fighters were completely drained. Qaeda threw some weak kicks, but Ibrahim's arms were heavy too, and he couldn't keep attacking. Both fighters paused to catch their breath. Ibrahim punched with all his might, but couldn't take Qaeda down. The more he swung, the more he gasped for air. And when Ibrahim's defense became sloppy, Qaeda put everything he had into one kick, sending his opponent crashing to the canvas. Qaeda finally won, making history in the tournament. The once lone wolf was now the undefeated champion of the boxing world. As Qaeda and his team celebrated in the locker room, the UFC matchmaker entered and offered him a contract to join the UFC. Qaeda had finally done it. He had achieved his dream. He embraced Elena tightly and gave her a passionate kiss. When Qaeda said he was thirsty, Nico went down to the room to get him some water. Stepping out of the door, Nico ran into the doping testers. They wanted to test Qaeda due to his exceptional performance today. Nico asked them to give Qaeda a moment to celebrate with everyone. After all, this is the first belt in his career. Taking advantage of the situation, Nico secretly slipped his drug into Qaeda's water. The young fighter gulped it down without realizing the terrible thing that was about to happen to him. And that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. See you in the next one.